The sun-scorched plains of Tascosa. Texas shimmered in the relentless heat of summer 1878 as Katherine Rose clutched her meager belongings, squinting at the dusty main street that would become her new beginning. Her journey west had been brutal, but nothing compared to the life she'd left behind. Catherine Kate, to the few who'd ever shown her kindness, pulled her shawl tighter despite the heat, conscious of hiding her hands. Those hands told stories she wasn't ready to share, each scar a chapter of struggle etched into her skin. At 23, she had already lived several lifetimes of hardship. The stagecoach had dropped her unceremoniously at the edge of town with a warning from the driver. "Tascosa ain't kind to women without men, miss." But kindness wasn't what Kate sought, merely survival, and perhaps, if fortune favored her, a measure of independence. The town bustled with the usual frontier characters: trail-weary cowboys, merchants hawking overpriced goods, and saloon girls calling from balconies. Kate kept her gaze fixed ahead, clutching her small valise. The letter in her pocket promised work at the Tascosa Hotel as a laundress, and that was all that mattered. "Watch yourself, lady." A rider nearly clipped her as he galloped past, spraying dust that clung to her travel-worn skirts. Kate didn't even flinch. After years of working in eastern factories where machines threatened to take fingers daily, a reckless rider barely registered as danger. The Tascosa Hotel stood 3 stories tall, the grandest building on the street, which wasn't saying much. Kate paused, gathering her courage before climbing the steps to the front porch. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the door, those hands that had endured so much, now seeking new purpose in this wild place. "You must be Miss Rose." The hotel proprietress, a stern-faced woman with graying hair pulled into a tight bun, appraised Kate with shrewd eyes. "Miriam Taylor, I run this establishment." "Yes, madam, I received your letter about the laundry position." "You're smaller than I expected," Mrs. Taylor said bluntly. "Laundry work is hard on the body, especially hands." Her gaze flicked down to Kate's gloved hands. Kate resisted the urge to hide them behind her back. "I'm stronger than I look, Mrs. Taylor, and no stranger to hard work." Something in her tone must have convinced the woman, who gave a short nod. "Very well. Room and board comes with the position, plus $2 weekly. Work starts before dawn. Agnes will show you your quarters." Kate followed a young maid up a narrow back staircase to a small room tucked under the eaves. The space was Spartan: a narrow bed, a washstand, and a hook for clothes, but it was clean and hers alone. "Laundry room's in the back," Agnes explained. "It's hot as hellfire in summer and freezes in winter. Last girl couldn't take it more than a month." "I'll manage," Kate said quietly. After Agnes left, Kate sank onto the bed, finally allowing herself a moment of rest. She removed her gloves slowly, revealing hands crisscrossed with burn marks, calluses, and the unmistakable scars from industrial machines. One particularly vicious scar ran from her left thumb across her palm, a reminder of the cotton mill accident that had nearly taken her hand entirely. She flexed her fingers, feeling the familiar ache. These hands had been her curse and her salvation, ugly but capable. In them, she carried her past and, hopefully, her future. Dawn came cruelly early in Tascosa. Kate was already in the laundry room when the first hints of light crept across the Texas sky. Mrs. Taylor had not exaggerated. The work was punishing. Massive copper boilers needed constant tending. Heavy wet linens required strength to wring and hang, and the harsh lye soap burned Kate's already damaged skin. But she worked without complaint, grateful for walls around her and a door that locked at night. Days blurred into weeks as Kate established her routine. She spoke little, kept to herself, and saved every penny. The townsfolk barely noticed her, just another working woman in a town where survival occupied everyone's attention. It was nearly a month after her arrival when Kate first encountered Quentin Baxter. She was struggling with a line of heavy, wet sheets, trying to hang them before the wind whipped them back down, when a deep voice called out, "Need some help with those, madam?" Kate turned to see a tall man leading a chestnut horse. His face was partially shadowed by his hat, but she could see he was young, perhaps late 20s, with a strong jaw dusted with stubble. "I can manage," she replied automatically, then cursed silently as another gust of wind tore a sheet from her grasp. The man tethered his horse to a nearby post without asking again and strode over to grab the errant sheet. "No doubt you can manage," he said, "but 4 hands work faster than 2. Kate noticed his hands, strong, tanned, with calluses that spoke of a life of physical work. A cowboy's hands. She kept her own gloved as they worked together, hanging the remaining laundry in companionable silence. "Thank you," she said when they finished, careful to keep her distance. Men who offered help usually expected something in return. "Quentin Baxter," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Most folks call me Quinn. Katherine Rose." She didn't offer that. Most folks called her Kate. In fact, nobody in Tascosa called her anything but Miss Rose or the laundress. "You're new to Tascosa." It wasn't a question. "About a month now," Quinn nodded, studying her with curious eyes that weren't unkind. "Well, Miss Rose, if you need help again, I'm usually around, working for the Triple R Ranch just outside town." Before Kate could respond, Mrs. Taylor's voice cut across the yard. "Miss Rose, those linens won't iron themselves." "I should go," Kate said, already backing away. "Thank you again, Mr. Baxter." "Quinn," he corrected with a slight smile. Kate returned to her work, dismissing the encounter. Cowboys pass through Tascosa constantly. This one would be no different. Yet as she pressed hot irons to the hotel's fine linens, she found herself recalling his easy manner, free of the usual swagger many cowboys adopted around women. A week passed without another sighting of Quinn Baxter, and Kate had almost forgotten him when he appeared in the hotel's back courtyard again. "Mrs. Taylor mentioned you needed coal brought up from the cellar," he said by way of greeting. Kate looked up from her washing, surprised. "She hired you for that?" Quinn's smile revealed a dimple in his right cheek. "Not exactly. I offered when I heard the regular man is laid up with a broken leg." "That's kind," Kate said, suspicious of such generosity. "It's self-serving," he replied with surprising honesty. "Gives me an excuse to see if you might join me for dinner at Parker's Cafe this evening." Kate's hand stilled in the soapy water. "I don't socialize, Mr. Baxter. Because you don't want to or because nobody's asked properly?" There was no mockery in his tone, just genuine curiosity. "Because I have neither the time nor the inclination," Kate replied, returning to her scrubbing. "But I appreciate the offer." Quinn didn't press. Instead, he simply nodded and headed for the cellar doors. Kate watched him from the corner of her eye as he efficiently carried up coal for the laundry boilers and kitchen stoves. He worked without complaint, even though it was clearly beneath the skills of a ranch hand. When he finished, his shirt was streaked with coal dust, but his smile remained undimmed. "Offer stands, Miss Rose. Parker makes a fine steak on Thursdays." "Why?" Kate found herself asking. "Why me? There are plenty of women in Tascosa eager for a cowboy's attention." Quinn regarded her thoughtfully. "Maybe because you're the only one who hasn't sought it." He touched his hat again. "Good day, Miss Rose." Kate watched him leave, confused by the encounter. Men had shown interest in her before, but usually with transparent intentions and crude approaches. Quinn's straightforward invitation and graceful acceptance of her refusal were unsettling in their difference. That evening, as Kate soaked her raw hands in a basin of cool water, She wondered if she'd made a mistake. It had been so long since she'd allowed herself simple pleasures like a meal in company. But experience had taught her that attachments led to vulnerability, and vulnerability led to pain. The following days brought more work as always, but also brought Quentin Baxter. He appeared regularly at the hotel, sometimes with legitimate business, other times with transparent excuses. He never pressed his dinner invitation again, but often left small tokens: a ribbon for her hair, fresh baked goods from the town bakery, once even a book of poetry. "I can't accept these gifts," Kate told him firmly after the third such offering. "They're not gifts expecting anything in return," Quinn replied. "Just small comforts that seemed like they might bring you a moment's pleasure." "Why would my pleasure concern you, Mr. Baxter?" Quinn leaned against the doorframe of the laundry room, his expression earnest. "Because this town beats people down, Miss Rose. I've watched it happen for years. The way you work with such quiet determination, it's admirable, but everyone deserves moments of joy." Kate had no response to that. The idea that someone observed her with such perception was disturbing. She had worked hard to be invisible. Summer gave way to autumn, bringing merciful relief from the heat. Kate's small room grew chilly at night, but she preferred it to the sweltering months before. Her hands, constantly exposed to hot water and harsh soap, grew increasingly raw despite her careful attention. One particularly cold morning, as she broke ice from the water pump, her gloves tore. The ancient leather, already patched multiple times, finally gave out completely. "Damn," she muttered, looking at her exposed hands in the gray morning light. The scars seemed more prominent than ever, white and pink against skin reddened by cold and work. "Miss Rose, Mrs. Taylor sent me to help carry." Quinn's voice cut off as he rounded the corner and saw her. Kate instinctively tucked her hands into her apron, but it was too late. His eyes had already registered what she'd kept hidden for months. "I can manage," she said stiffly, turning away. "Katherine." It was the first time he'd used her full name. "Your hands are none of your concern," she finished sharply. "Please leave." Instead, Quinn stepped closer. "You're bleeding." Kate looked down and saw he was right. The broken ice had cut her already damaged skin. "It's nothing, happens all the time." Without warning, Quinn took her wrist gently, turning her hand palm up to examine the cut. Kate was too shocked to pull away immediately. No one had touched her with such care in years, perhaps ever. "This needs tending," he said quietly. "I said I can manage." Kate pulled her hand back, embarrassment burning her cheeks. "I don't need your pity." Quinn's expression hardened slightly. "It's not pity to care when someone's hurt, Katherine. It is when they are damaged goods," she shot back before she could stop herself. Something flashed in his eyes, not disgust as she expected, but a fierce disagreement. "Is that what you think? That scars make you damaged?" Kate laughed bitterly. "In my experience, men prefer women with soft, unblemished hands, hands that haven't known real work." "Then you've known fools," Quinn said simply. "A woman's hands tell her story. Yours tell me you're stronger than most men I've ridden with." The sincerity in his voice silenced Kate's retort. For a moment they stood in the cold morning air, regarding each other with new awareness. "Let me help you carry the water," Quinn finally said. "Then you can tell me to leave again if you wish." Kate nodded silently, allowing this small concession. They worked together efficiently, filling the laundry boilers for the day's work. When they finished, Quinn didn't leave as she expected. Instead, he pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her. "For your hand." "Thank you," Kate said quietly, accepting the simple kindness. "Miss Rose," Quinn began, then paused. "Katherine, I'd still like to take you to dinner, not out of pity, out of admiration." Kate studied him, searching for insincerity and finding none. "I'll consider it," she finally said. Quinn's smile was worth the concession. That evening, Kate examined herself in the small mirror above her washstand. Her reflection showed a woman she barely recognized, sometimes thin face, serious eyes, hair pulled back severely. She had once been pretty, or so her mother had told her. Before life had hardened her edges, on impulse, she loosened her hair, letting it fall around her shoulders. The woman in the mirror looked younger, softer. Kate quickly braided it again, but left it hanging down her back instead of pinning it up. Small steps, she told herself. The following day brought news that rippled through Tascosa. A band of cattle rustlers had hit several ranches, including the Triple R. Quinn didn't appear at the hotel that day or the next. Kate told herself the hollow feeling in her chest wasn't disappointment. On the third day, Agnes burst into the laundry room with wide eyes. "There's been a shootout. The rustlers were caught at Peterson's Crossing." Kate's hands stilled in the soapy water. "Was anyone hurt? 2 rustlers dead, they say, and one of the ranch hands took a bullet." Agnes lowered her voice dramatically. "That tall one who's sweet on you, Quentin Baxter." The basin clattered as Kate's suddenly nerveless fingers lost their grip. "Is he? Doc Morgan's tending him now. They brought him to town since the ranch is too far out." Kate barely heard the rest of Agnes's gossip. Her mind was filled with the image of Quinn lying injured or worse. The realization of how much she'd come to care about his visits shocked her. When her work was finally done for the day, Kate made her way to Dr. Morgan's office, her heart beating uncomfortably fast. She hesitated at the door, suddenly uncertain. What right did she have to inquire after Quinn? She was nothing to him, just a woman who had repeatedly rejected his kindness. Before she could turn away, the door opened and Mrs. Taylor emerged. "Miss Rose, what are you doing here?" I heard about Mr. Baxter," Kate stammered. "Is he?" Mrs. Taylor's stern face softened slightly. "He'll live. Bullet went clean through his shoulder. He's asking for you." "For me?" Kate couldn't hide her surprise. "Been delirious with fever, calling your name." Mrs. Taylor studied Kate curiously. "I didn't realize you two were acquainted beyond his visits to the hotel." "We're not, that is." Kate stopped, unsure how to explain their relationship. "May I see him, Mrs.?" Taylor nodded, stepping aside. "Doctor says he needs rest, so don't stay long." The doctor's office was dim and smelled of carbolic acid. Quinn lay on a narrow bed in the back room, his face pale beneath his tan. Kate approached cautiously, almost afraid to look. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. She stood by his bedside, suddenly at a loss. After a moment's hesitation, she reached out and gently touched his hand, the first time she had initiated contact between them. His eyes fluttered open. For a moment he seemed confused, then recognition dawned. "Katherine," he whispered, "you came." "Of course I came," she said softly, surprised to find it was true. Of course she had come, how could she not? "Thought I might die without seeing you again," Quinn said, his voice rough. "Seemed like a poor way to go." "Don't talk like that," Kate admonished, her fingers tightening around his. "Dr. Morgan says you'll recover." Quinn's lips curved in a weak smile. "Then I'll have to find another excuse to get you to hold my hand." Despite everything, Kate felt a smile tugging at her mouth. "You're delirious, Mr. Baxter." "Quinn," he corrected, as he always did, "and I'm clear-headed enough to know a miracle when I see one." His eyes traveled to their joined hands. Kate realized she'd forgotten to put her gloves back on after work. Her scarred hands were fully visible, clasped around his. She started to pull away, but Quinn turned his hand to capture hers. "Don't," he said simply. For a long moment they remained that way, connected by that simple touch. Then Dr. Morgan entered, breaking the spell. "Miss Rose, my patient needs rest," he said firmly. Kate nodded, reluctantly releasing Quinn's hand. "I'll return tomorrow," she promised before she could reconsider. The warmth in Quinn's eyes followed her out the door. True to her word, Kate returned the next day and the next. Mrs. Taylor, surprisingly, adjusted Kate's duties to allow these visits, perhaps recognizing something in Kate's determined expression that brooked no argument. As Quinn recovered, their conversations deepened. Kate learned he had come to Texas from Missouri after the war, orphaned and seeking a future. He'd worked his way up from stable boy to valued ranch hand through sheer determination. "The Triple R is home now," he explained. "Mr. Ryerson is fair, pays well, and treats his men with respect." "You're fortunate," Kate observed. "Not all employers value their workers." Something in her tone made Quinn study her thoughtfully. "Your hands," he said gently. "Will you tell me how they came to be scarred?" Kate hesitated. She had never shared the full story with anyone in Tascosa. But Quinn's patient gaze held no judgment, only interest. "I worked in textile mills back east since I was 14, she began slowly. "Cotton mills first, then woolen mills, the machines." She looked down at her hands. "They're hungry things. A moment's inattention and they'll take a finger." "I was lucky mostly, just scars." "Mostly," Quinn prompted. Kate's fingers traced the long scar across her left palm. "This one nearly took my hand. The overseer said I was careless. Maybe I was. We worked 14-hour days. Everyone was exhausted." Quinn's expression darkened. "That's not right." "That's life for working women," Kate said simply. "The burns came later at the laundry in St. Louis. Lye soap and scalding water day after day. Hands can only take so much. Yet you chose laundry work here." Kate nodded. "It was what I knew, and Mrs. Taylor's advertisement promised room and board. I needed." She trailed off. "A safe place," Quinn finished for her. Their eyes met in understanding. They both knew what it meant to seek refuge, to build a life from nothing. "When I'm back on my feet," Quinn said after a moment, "I still want to take you to dinner." Kate smiled, surprising herself. "Perhaps I'll say yes this time." 2 weeks later, Quinn was well enough to leave the doctor's care, though his arm remained in a sling. Kate found herself unaccountably nervous as she prepared for their dinner at Parker's Cafe. She wore her single good dress navy blue with a modest neckline, and even splurged on a ribbon for her hair from the general store. Quinn waited on the hotel porch, his hat in his hand. When Kate emerged, his eyes widened appreciatively. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "You clean up well yourself," Kate replied, noting his freshly shaved face and pressed shirt. Parker's Cafe was busy with the evening crowd, but Quinn had secured a table in the corner, away from the main hustle. Kate noticed the curious glances from other diners. The quiet laundress out with the handsome cowboy was evidently worthy of gossip. "Ignore them," Quinn said, reading her discomfort. "Tascosa thrives on talk because there's precious little else to do when the sun goes down." The meal was the finest Kate had eaten in months: tender steak, fresh bread, even apple pie for dessert. Quinn kept the conversation light, sharing amusing stories about life at the Triple R. "Mr. Ryerson says I can return to work next week," he mentioned as they lingered over coffee. "Light duties only, until my shoulder's fully healed." "That's good news," Kate said, ignoring the pang she felt at the thought of seeing less of him. "You must be eager to get back." "Yes and no." Quinn's gaze was steady. "I've grown accustomed to seeing you every day." Kate looked down at her coffee cup, uncertain how to respond. Part of her apart she barely recognized anymore wanted to admit she'd miss him too, but old habits of self-protection died hard. "Katherine," Quinn said softly, "may I ask you something?" She nodded cautiously. "Why did you come to Tascosa? The real reason." Kate considered deflecting but found she wanted to tell him the truth. "I was running," she admitted, "from a man, my former employer at the St. Louis laundry. He had expectations beyond my work. Quinn's expression hardened. Did he hurt you? He tried. I left before he could. Kate's fingers tightened around her cup. I've learned that a woman alone is seen as available, no matter how she conducts herself. Not by decent men, Quinn said firmly. Decent men are rare treasures, Mr. Baxter. Kate gave him a small smile. As I'm beginning to learn. The walk back to the hotel was quiet, both of them absorbed in their thoughts. When they reached the front porch, Quinn turned to face her. Thank you for coming to dinner, he said. I'd like to see you again, properly like this. Kate hesitated only briefly. I'd like that too. Quinn's smile was radiant in the lamplight. On impulse, Kate removed her gloves, revealing her scarred hands in the dim glow. These are the real me, she said quietly. Not the woman in the blue dress and ribbon. These hands are my history, my burden. Quinn reached out slowly and took her right hand in his. With deliberate tenderness, he raised it to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Not a burden, he said, his voice low. A testament to your strength. Something shifted in Kate's chest, a wall beginning to crumble after years of careful construction. Before she could respond, Quinn released her hand and stepped back. Good night, Katherine Rose, he said, touching his hat. Sweet dreams. Kate watched him walk away, her hand still tingling where his lips had touched. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to consider a future that held more than mere survival. The weeks that followed brought changes to Kate's carefully ordered life. Quinn, back at work at the Triple R, still found reasons to visit town regularly. Their courtship for Kate could no longer deny that's what it was progressed with a sweetness she had never expected to find in rough-edged Tascosa. October brought cooler weather and the town's harvest festival. Against her better judgment, Kate agreed to attend with Quinn. The town square was transformed with lanterns, bunting, and tables laden with food brought by local families. I don't belong here, Kate whispered to Quinn as they approached the gathering. These people barely know me. Then it's time they did, Quinn replied, his hand warm at the small of her back. Besides, Mrs. Taylor's been telling everyone her laundress makes the finest pressed linens in the Texas Panhandle. The evening proved less intimidating than Kate had feared. Quinn introduced her to friends from the Triple R and various townsfolk she'd only seen in passing. She found herself genuinely enjoying the music, the food, and especially the company. As they walked back to the hotel under a star-filled sky, Quinn took her hand. Was it so terrible? He asked, amusement in his voice. Not terrible, Kate admitted, but exhausting. I've spent so long avoiding notice. Why? Quinn asked. What are you afraid people will see? Kate stopped walking, turning to face him in the moonlight. The truth, I suppose, that I'm not like other women. That I'm extraordinary, Quinn suggested. Damaged, Kate corrected. Inside as well as out. Quinn studied her face. We all carry damage, Katherine. Some just hide it better than others. And what damage do you carry, Quentin Baxter? She challenged softly. His expression grew serious. Memories of war, though I was young when it ended. The knowledge that I couldn't save my parents from illness. The fear that the life I'm building might crumble like theirs did. He paused. The terror that you might decide I'm not worth the risk. His honesty stole Kate's breath. I'm afraid too, she admitted. Afraid to trust this us when experience has taught me that good things don't last. Then we're both taking a chance, Quinn said. He reached up to touch her face gently. May I kiss you, Katherine? Kate nodded, her heart pounding. Quinn's lips touched hers with exquisite tenderness, a kiss that asked nothing but offered everything. When they parted, Kate felt dizzy with emotions long suppressed. I think I'm falling in love with you, Quinn whispered against her hair. Kate closed her eyes, absorbing the words she'd never expected to hear. I don't know how to do this, she confessed. How to be loved, "We'll learn together," Quinn promised. Winter descended on Tascosa, with bitter wind and occasional snow that transformed the dusty streets into muddy thoroughfares. Kate's laundry work became even more demanding as heating water required constant attention to fires, and drying linens indoors created a perpetual dampness in the laundry room. Quinn's visits grew less frequent as winter weather made the journey from the Triple R more challenging. But when he did come to town, he always brought small gifts, warm woolen gloves to replace Kate's threadbare ones, a shawl he'd purchased from a traveling peddler, books to read during the long evenings. "You spoil me," Kate protested after a particularly thoughtful gift of beeswax salve for her work-roughened hands. "I'd do far more if you'd let me," Quinn replied. They were sitting in the hotel's small parlor, a rare moment of privacy granted by Mrs. Taylor, who had developed an unexpected soft spot for their courtship. "Quinn," Kate began hesitantly, "what do you want from us?" He took her hands in his expression serious. "Everything," he said simply. "A future, a life together." Kate's breath caught. "Are you asking?" "Not yet," Quinn interrupted gently. "But soon, when you're ready to hear it." The honesty between them had become as natural as breathing. Kate nodded, grateful for his understanding of her need for time. Christmas approached, bringing festive preparations to Tascosa despite the harsh weather. The hotel was busier than usual with travelers seeking shelter from the cold, increasing Kate's workload substantially. By Christmas Eve, her hands were raw despite the protective salve Quinn had given her. Mrs. Taylor found her soaking them in cool water late that evening. "Good heavens, girl, why didn't you say they'd gotten so bad?" Kate shrugged. "The work needs doing." "Not at the expense of crippling yourself," Mrs. Taylor said firmly. "Take tomorrow off, it's Christmas." "But the guests can manage with yesterday's linens for one day." Mrs. Taylor's tone brooked no argument. "Besides, that cowboy of yours rode in an hour ago, half frozen. He's waiting in the parlor." Kate hurried downstairs, forgetting her painful hands at the news of Quinn's arrival. He stood when she entered, his face lighting up. "Katherine," he said, crossing to take her hands. He frowned when he saw their condition. "Your poor hands." "It's nothing," she began, but Quinn was already examining them with concern. "This isn't nothing," he said. "They're cracked and bleeding." "Occupational hazard," Kate tried to joke. Quinn shook his head. "Not anymore. Not if I have anything to say about it." He guided her to sit beside him on the small sofa. "I have something for you, a Christmas gift." He reached into his coat and withdrew a small package wrapped in brown paper. Kate accepted it hesitantly. "I didn't get you anything," she said, embarrassed. "You've given me more than you know," Quinn replied. "Open it." Kate unwrapped the package to reveal a small velvet box. Her heart began to race as she opened it to find a simple gold band with a tiny pearl. "It was my mother's," Quinn said quietly. "Katherine Rose, I love you. I want to build a life with you, a good life where your hands can heal and your heart can be at peace. Will you marry me?" Kate stared at the ring, overwhelmed. "Quinn, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll consider it," he urged. "I know it's sudden, yes," Kate interrupted, surprising herself. "Yes, I'll marry you." Quinn's face transformed with joy. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then raised both her hands to his lips. One by one, he kissed each scar that marked her skin. "Your hands are beautiful," he murmured against her palm. "Every mark tells me how strong you are, how determined. I'll spend my life making sure they know gentler work." Tears filled Kate's eyes, not from pain, but from a joy so intense it was almost unbearable. "I love you," she whispered, saying the words for the first time. Quinn gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of her sore hands, and held her as though she were precious beyond measure. In that moment, Kate finally believed she might be. They were married on New Year's Day, 1879, in Tascosa's small church. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, attended by Quinn's friends from the Triple R, and to Kate's surprise, many of the townspeople she'd come to know in her quiet way. Mrs. Taylor stood as Kate's witness, her usually stern face softened with approval. Kate wore a new dress of soft blue wool, a wedding gift from Mrs. Taylor, and carried a small bouquet of winter greenery. Her hands, though still bearing their scars, had begun to heal thanks to reduced work and Quinn's careful attention. I, Quentin James Baxter, take thee, Katherine Elizabeth Rose, to be my lawfully wedded wife. Quinn's voice was steady and sure as he spoke his vows. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death us do part. When it was Kate's turn, her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes never left Quinn's. I, Katherine Elizabeth Rose, take thee, Quentin James Baxter, to be my lawfully wedded husband. The words that had once seemed impossible for someone like her now felt like the most natural promise she'd ever made. Their first home was a small cabin on Triple R land, granted by Mr. Ryerson as a wedding gift to his valued ranch hand and new bride. It was modest but sturdy, with a stone fireplace and 2 rooms luxury compared to Kate's attic quarters at the hotel. "It needs a woman's touch," Quinn admitted as he carried Kate over the threshold that first evening. "But it's ours." "It's perfect," Kate said honestly, surveying the simple space with wonder. Never had she imagined having a home of her own, a place where she belonged completely. The winter months passed in a haze of newfound happiness as they settled into married life. Kate learned to cook on the small iron stove, tended their home, and even began helping with the ranch accounts when Mr. Ryerson discovered she had a head for figures. "You're a natural with numbers," he told her appreciatively. Quinn said you were smart, but he understated the case. Quinn beamed with pride whenever anyone complimented his wife. His love for Kate was evident to everyone at the Triple R, sometimes causing good-natured teasing from the other hands. "Never thought I'd see the day Baxter got himself hitched," one old cowboy remarked during a Sunday dinner at the main house. "And to the prettiest girl in Tascosa, no less." Kate blushed at the compliment, still unused to such attention. Under Quinn's loving gaze, she had begun to see herself differently, not as damaged goods, but as a woman of worth and beauty. Spring came to the Texas Panhandle, bringing new growth and color to the landscape. The Triple R bustled with activity as calving season arrived, keeping Quinn busy from dawn until dusk. Kate found her own rhythms, tending their garden, keeping house, and continuing to help with the ranch books. Her hands, though still bearing their scars, grew stronger and less painful. Quinn maintained his habit of kissing them regularly, a reminder of his first declaration of love. Kate never tired of this tender gesture. One evening in late April, as they sat on their small porch watching the sunset, Kate took Quinn's hand and placed it gently on her stomach. "I have news," she said softly. Quinn's eyes widened with realization. "Katherine, are you saying?" She nodded, her eyes shining. "The baby should arrive around November, according to Mrs. Peterson." Quinn let out a whoop of joy that probably could be heard all the way to the main house. He gathered Kate into his arms, spinning her gently before setting her down with sudden concern. "Should I not have done that? I don't want to hurt you or the baby." Kate laughed, a sound that had become more common in recent months. "I'm with child, not made of glass." Quinn knelt before her, his hands cradling her still flat stomach with reverence. "A family," he whispered. "Our family." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer months. Kate's body changed, growing fuller and more rounded. Quinn watched these changes with fascination and devotion, declaring her more beautiful with each passing week. "You're biased," Kate teased as he admired her expanding figure. "Completely," he agreed without shame, "but also correct." As her time grew nearer, they prepared the small second room as a nursery. Quinn crafted a cradle from pine, sanding it until it was smooth as silk. "For small, delicate hands," he explained as Kate ran her fingers over the perfect finish. The baby arrived on a cold November night with the assistance of Mrs. Peterson, the ranch foreman's wife, who had helped deliver most of the Triple R children. After hours of labor, Kate gave birth to a healthy son with a shock of dark hair and his father's dimpled smile. "He's perfect," Quinn whispered, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he held his son for the first time. "What shall we name him, James?" Kate suggested, honoring Quinn's middle name. "James Thomas Baxter," Quinn nodded, too overcome to speak. He gently placed the baby in Kate's arms, then sat beside them on the bed, his family complete. As winter settled over the Triple R once more, Kate often found herself awake in the night, nursing little James in the rocking chair Quinn had surprised her with after the birth. On one such night, Quinn woke and joined her, kneeling beside the chair. "You should sleep," Kate whispered, stroking the baby's downy head. "I was dreaming of you," Quinn said, his voice husky with emotion. "Of the day we met you hanging laundry in the wind, looking like you didn't need anyone's help." "I was wrong," Kate admitted with a smile. "I needed you." Quinn took her free hand, the one not cradling their son, and pressed his lips to each scar, each callus, each mark of her journey. "Your hands built this life," he said reverently. "These beautiful, strong hands." Kate looked at her son, at her husband, at the home they had created together, and finally believed it. Her hands, once symbols of hardship and struggle, had become instruments of love, nurturing a family she had never dared to dream possible. "I love you, Quinn Baxter," she said simply. "And I love you, Katherine Baxter," he replied, rising to kiss her forehead. "Every part of you, always." Outside, snow began to fall, covering the Texas landscape in pristine white. But inside the small cabin on the Triple R, warmth and love created a different kind of beauty, one built by scarred hands and healed hearts, finding their place in a world that had once seemed so unforgiving. The years that followed brought changes to the Baxter family and the Triple R. When James was 3, Kate gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Elizabeth Rose, with her mother's determined spirit and her father's charm. 2 years later, another son joined the family, Robert Quinn Baxter, the spitting image of his father. Quinn's position at the ranch grew more substantial as Mr. Ryerson aged. By 1885, Quinn had been promoted to foreman, responsible for the daily operations of the sprawling property. The Baxters moved into a larger house closer to the main ranch buildings, a comfortable 4-room structure that Kate transformed into a true home. "I never imagined having so much space," she admitted as they settled into their new dwelling. "You deserve every inch of it and more," Quinn replied, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind as they surveyed their new parlor. Kate's hands, though still bearing the marks of her former life, had found new purpose. They tended children, managed a household, kept the ranch books with growing expertise, and even found time for small pleasures like quilting and gardening. The deep cracks and constant pain had healed, leaving only the scars as reminders of her journey. In 1888, Mr. Ryerson made an unexpected proposal that would change their lives forever. "I'm getting too old for this business," he told Quinn and Kate one evening after dinner at the main house. "My children have no interest in ranching, they're all back east living city lives. I need someone who understands this land, these cattle, this way of life." Quinn listened respectfully, sensing what might be coming. "I want to sell you the Triple R," Mr. Ryerson continued. "Not all at once, I know you don't have that kind of money, but over time with fair terms." Kate gasped softly beside Quinn. Owning the ranch had never been part of their dreams. It seemed too far beyond their reach. "Sir," Quinn began carefully, "that's an incredibly generous offer, but it's not generosity," Mr. Ryerson interrupted gruffly. "It's good business. You've nearly doubled our profits since taking over as foreman. You understand cattle, and Kate here keeps better books than any accountant in Tascosa." He cleared his throat. "Besides, you two are the closest thing to family I have these days." Quinn looked at Kate, a question in his eyes. This would be a risk, a massive undertaking that would tie them to this land and this life completely. Kate nodded, her decision already made. "We would be honored, Mr. Ryerson," she said firmly. The transition of ownership began gradually. Quinn and Kate put every spare penny toward purchasing shares of the ranch. Their days grew longer, their responsibilities heavier, but their determination never wavered. "Are we crazy?" Kate asked Quinn late one night as they reviewed the ranch ledgers, tallying figures by lamplight. "Taking on this much?" Quinn looked up, the same boyish smile still lighting his face despite the new lines around his eyes. "Probably," he admitted, "but we've faced worse odds." He was right, Kate knew. From her desperate arrival in Tascosa to Quinn's brush with death at the hands of rustlers, they had overcome greater challenges than ranch ownership. By 1890, they owned half the Triple R, and their children were thriving in the ranching life. James, now 11, showed his father's natural affinity for horses and cattle. 8-year-old Elizabeth demonstrated Kate's head for numbers and organization, while 6-year-old Robert revealed a talent for charming everyone from ranch hands to cattle buyers. "They're growing too fast," Kate remarked as she watched the children help with evening chores, James confidently showing his younger siblings how to feed the chickens. "That's what children do," Quinn replied, slipping his arm around her waist. "But they're growing strong and true, thanks to their mother." Kate leaned into his embrace, still marveling at how comfortable such closeness had become. The frightened, defensive woman who had arrived in Tascosa 12 years earlier would scarcely recognize the Kate Baxter of today, confident, respected, and deeply loved. In the spring of 1892, Kate discovered she was expecting their 4th child, a surprise that filled the family with joy and some trepidation given Kate's age of 37. "Are you sure you're strong enough for this?" Quinn asked worriedly as they lay in bed one night, his hand resting protectively on her growing belly. Kate covered his hand with her own, those same scarred hands that had become symbols of their love story. "These hands have endured cotton mills and scalding laundry water," she reminded him. "They can certainly handle one more baby." Quinn raised her palm to his lips, kissing it with the same reverence he had shown that Christmas Eve long ago. "Your hands are still the most beautiful I've ever seen," he murmured. Kate's 4th pregnancy proved more difficult than her previous ones. Dr. Morgan ordered bed rest for the final months, a challenge for a woman accustomed to constant activity. The ranch hands' wives and older women of Tascosa took turns helping with the household while Elizabeth, now 10, assumed responsibilities beyond her years. "You're so much like your mother," Quinn told his daughter proudly as she efficiently organized the household laundry. "Strong and capable. Will Mama be all right?" Elizabeth asked, her young face serious with concern. "Your mother is the strongest person I know," Quinn assured her. "She'll be fine." On a crisp October morning in 1892, after a labor that tested even Kate's formidable strength, Sarah Quinn Baxter entered the world small but healthy, with a fierce cry that belied her size. "She has your spirit," Quinn told Kate as she cradled their newborn daughter. "Heaven help us all." Kate laughed weakly, exhausted but triumphant. "She has your stubborn chin." The family gathered around Kate's bed to welcome their newest member, James solemn and protective, Elizabeth fascinated, Robert cautiously curious. Quinn watched them with overwhelming love, this family created from nothing but hope and perseverance. "We did this," Kate whispered to him later, when the children had gone and baby Sarah slept peacefully in her cradle. She held out her hands, still bearing their scars, but now also bearing the marks of motherhood, of ranching, of a life fully lived. Quinn took those beloved hands in his own work-roughened ones. "You did this," he corrected gently. "Your strength built our family, our ranch, our life." "We did it together," Kate insisted. "From the moment you helped me hang those sheets in the wind." Quinn smiled at the memory. "Best decision I ever made, offering help to a woman who clearly didn't need it." "I needed it more than I knew," Kate admitted. "I just couldn't say so." As Sarah grew from infant to toddler, the final payment was made on the Triple R. In the spring of 1895, Mr. Ryerson signed the deed over completely, making Quinn and Kate full owners of one of the most prosperous ranches in the Texas Panhandle. "It doesn't seem real," Kate marveled as they stood together on their porch, surveying the land that now belonged entirely to them. "From laundress to ranch owner in 16 years. You were never just a laundress," Quinn said, his arm around her shoulders. "You were always destined for more." The ranch thrived under their ownership. Quinn's innovative breeding programs improved their stock, while Kate's careful financial management ensured stability even during difficult seasons. Their reputation for fair dealing spread throughout the territory, bringing new business and respect. The Baxter children grew tall and strong in the Texas sun. James, approaching manhood, began taking on serious responsibilities at the ranch, showing every sign of following in his father's footsteps. Elizabeth's quick mind earned her praise from the Tascosa schoolteacher, who predicted she might be college material, an idea that both excited and terrified her parents. Robert's natural charm and way with words suggested a future perhaps in law or politics, while young Sarah showed a wild streak that kept everyone on their toes. "She reminds me of you," Quinn told Kate one evening as they watched 5-year-old Sarah determinedly trying to rope a fence post like her older brothers. "Me?" Kate asked, surprised. "I was never that bold." "You rode a stagecoach alone to a frontier town with nothing but determination and the clothes on your back," Quinn reminded her. "That takes a special kind of courage." Kate considered this, watching her daughter's fierce concentration. "Perhaps you're right." "I'm always right about you," Quinn teased, earning a playful swat from his wife. As the century drew to a close, Tascosa itself began to change. The railroad had bypassed the town, causing a gradual decline as business shifted to more connected settlements. But the Triple R remained strong, adapting to new markets and methods. In 1900, as the world welcomed a new century, the Baxters celebrated their 21st wedding anniversary with a gathering that brought together friends and family from across the region. The original Triple R hands who had known them from the beginning raised glasses to toast their success. "To Quinn and Kate," Mr. Ryerson said, his voice quavering with age but still commanding, "who proved that determination and love can build something lasting in this harsh land." That night, after the celebration ended and their guests departed, Quinn and Kate stood on their porch under a vast canopy of stars, just as they had countless nights before. 21 years, Kate marveled. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I stepped off that stagecoach." "And sometimes it feels like you've always been here," Quinn replied, taking her hand in his. "Like you're part of this land itself." Kate looked down at their joined hands, hers still bearing the faint scars of her past life, his weathered by decades of ranching. Both pairs of hands told stories of work, struggle, and ultimately triumph. "You ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Marrying a woman with such damaged hands and a difficult past?" Quinn turned to her, his face serious in the moonlight. Though now in his late 40s, with silver threading his dark hair, his eyes still held the same warmth that had first melted Kate's defenses all those years ago. "Katherine Elizabeth Baxter," he said solemnly, "loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life." He raised her hands to his lips, kissing each one with deliberate tenderness, just as he had done that first Christmas Eve. "These hands built our world," he murmured against her skin. "They've raised our children, managed our ranch, and held my heart safely all these years. They will always be beautiful to me." Kate's eyes filled with tears as she realized the full circle of their journey from a scarred, defensive laundress and a hopeful young cowboy to ranch owners, parents, and partners who had weathered life's storms together. "I love you, Quinn Baxter," she whispered, the words as true now as they had been when first spoken. "And I love you," he replied simply, "every day more than the last." Inside their home, their children slept peacefully. James, now a young man of 21, Elizabeth, a poised young woman of 18, Robert, a handsome youth of 16, and Sarah, a spirited child of 8. Beyond the house stretched the Triple R, thousands of acres representing not just livelihood but legacy. And it had all begun with a cowboy who saw beauty in a laundress's scarred hands that had found their true purpose in building a life filled with love.